The moment I walked into the courtroom, my daughter Denise let out a quiet laugh, and my son-in-law Terrence Howard shook his head with open contempt. I was wearing my simple country clothes, worn-out boots, and held an old hat in my hands. I looked like a lost farmer, a confused old man who did not understand where he was. I saw Denise whisper something to Terrence, and he smiled with that arrogance that had always defined him. I heard her choked laugh, a sound that cut through my chest like a knife. To them, I was an embarrassment, an inconvenience, a silly old fool who had no business being there. But then the judge looked up. His eyes met mine. I watched as the color drained from his face, and his hand trembled on the wooden gavel. His lips moved, and he whispered something that silenced the entire courtroom. "My God," he said, "it is really him." Everyone turned to look at me. The silence became so thick I could hear my own heart pounding in my ears. Denise stopped smiling. Terrence frowned, confused, staring at the judge as if he had lost his mind. They had no idea who I truly was. Not until that moment, because to them, I was just Pop, the old man who lived in a little farmhouse out in Chesterfield County, the man they had ignored for years, the obstacle they now wanted to declare incompetent so they could take everything. But what they did not know was that this courtroom had been my second home for 38 years, that every corner of this place held my footprints, and that the man sitting behind that bench owed me everything he was. If you have ever felt that your own family cast you aside, that they treated you as if you were invisible, as if everything you had done in your life was worthless, then you know exactly how I felt that morning. But let me tell you how I got there. How the daughter I raised, the one I loved more than my own life, decided I was useless. It all started 4 months earlier when I got the call about the death of my brother Raymond. Raymond and I were more than brothers. We were like two halves of the same soul. He had died alone in his big house in Richmond, while I lived my quiet life in the country, away from everything and everyone. Denise was the one who gave me the news. Her voice sounded strange over the phone, too controlled, too cold. "Pop," she said, "Uncle Raymond passed away. We need to talk about his estate. There are legal matters to resolve." I could barely breathe. Raymond was gone, and I had not even been there to say goodbye. My older brother, the man who had taught me to be strong when our father died, the man who always believed in me, even when no one else did. But Denise did not ask how I felt. She did not offer comfort. She only spoke of papers, property, and inheritance. "We will need you to come to the city," she said. "There are documents you have to sign." Something in her tone bothered me, but I was too overwhelmed by grief to pay attention. I agreed to go. I packed a small bag and drove the 45 minutes to Richmond, where Denise lived with Terrence in that enormous house I never understood why they needed. When I arrived, Terrence opened the door. He did not even greet me with a hug. He just nodded and stepped aside to let me pass, as if I were a traveling salesman and not his wife's father. Denise was in the living room, surrounded by papers. She hugged me quickly, but it was an empty embrace without warmth. "Sit down, Pop," she said, pointing to the sofa. "We have important things to discuss." Saturday, Terrence stood behind her, arms crossed, looking at me as if I were a problem he needed to solve. Denise began to talk about Raymond's inheritance. A big property on the outskirts of the city, valued at over $950,000. Land, investments, bank accounts. "Raymond left everything to you," Denise said, but her voice did not sound happy. It sounded annoyed, frustrated. "Pop, you live alone in the country. You do not need all that. You do not know how to handle that kind of wealth. You could lose everything." Terrence intervened then, with that grave, authoritative voice he always used. "Mr. Carter," he said, without calling me Pop or father-in-law, as if we were not family at all, "the sensible thing would be for you to let us handle this. Denise is an attorney. I have business experience. We can make sure everything is managed correctly." I looked at both of them. Something churned inside me. A silent alarm was starting to ring. "Managed?" I asked. "Or kept?" Denise's face hardened. "Do not be ridiculous, Pop. We are trying to help you. You do not understand these things. You have been living like a hermit for years. The world changed, and you stayed behind." Her words hurt more than she could ever imagine, because she was right about one thing. After my wife Dorothy died 6 years ago, I had withdrawn from everything. I had moved to the country, to a simple little house in Chesterfield County, to live in peace away from the noise and lies of the city. But that did not mean I was a fool. It did not mean I had forgotten who I was before that quiet life. I need time to think, I told them. I am not signing anything today. Denise exchanged a look with Terence, a look I did not like at all. All right, Pop, she said with a forced smile. Take your time, but not too much. There are legal deadlines to meet. That night, I slept in their guest room. I could not close my eyes. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. And my instinct, the instinct that had saved me so many times in my life, told me not to trust them. The next morning, I heard voices downstairs. I quietly got up and crept down the stairs barefoot. Denise and Terence were in the kitchen, talking in low voices, but not low enough. He is a stubborn old man, Terence was saying. If he will not sign willingly, we will have to do it the hard way. I know, Denise replied. That is why I hired the lawyer. We are going to declare him incompetent. With his age and the fact that he lives alone, isolated, it will be easy to convince a judge that he is not fit to handle an inheritance like this. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. My own daughter, my little Denise, the girl I had carried in my arms, who had cried on my shoulder after her first heartbreak, who had screamed with joy when I gave her the keys to her first car. That girl was now planning to rob me, to destroy me, to take the only thing my brother had left me. I stood there in the darkness of the staircase, as they continued talking, planning, plotting my destruction, as if I were an unimportant obstacle. And at that moment, I knew I had to act. I could not let this happen, because if Raymond had taught me anything, if I had learned anything in all those years, it was that a man does not give up. No matter how dark the night gets, no matter if the one who betrays you is your own blood. I drove back to the country that same morning without saying goodbye. I did not want Denise and Terence to know I had overheard them. I needed time to think, to remember who I had been before I became this lonely old man, living among chickens and tomato plants. I drove the 45 minutes back to Chesterfield, my hands clenched on the steering wheel, feeling rage and pain fight inside my chest. When I got to my little house, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and let the memories flood in. Raymond and I grew up in a humble family right here in Virginia. Our father James was a carpenter, and our mother Ruth was a seamstress. We did not have luxuries, but we had something much more valuable. We had principles. Dad always told us that a man without his word is not a man. He is just a shadow walking. When Dad died, I was barely 19, and Raymond was 24. He left college to work and support me through school. He sacrificed for me without a second thought. He worked at the tobacco warehouse during the day and studied law by correspondence at night. Years later, when I managed to become a lawyer, Raymond was already finishing his degree. We graduated almost at the same time. He with honors, despite everything. And we both swore the same thing. We were never going to be like those corrupt lawyers we saw every day. Those who sold their souls for money. Raymond went into legal business. Always clean, always correct. I took another path. I became a judge at 33, one of the youngest black judges in Virginia's history. And for 38 years, I sat on that bench at Richmond Circuit Court, defending the only thing that matters, the truth. But being an honest judge in a corrupt world has a price. I refused bribes that would have made anyone rich. I faced death threats. I lost friendships. There were nights Dorothy cried in fear because someone had left a threatening note on our door. Denise grew up seeing all that. She grew up watching her father earn a modest salary while other judges built mansions. She grew up hearing her mother worry, watching me come home tired, exhausted from fighting battles that seemed to never end. Maybe that is why she chose to be different. Maybe that is why when she entered law school, she did so with an ambition that frightened me. I do not want to be like you, she used to say. I do not want to sacrifice myself for ideals that do not put food on the table. She met Terence in college. He came from a family with money. One of those families where shady business is disguised as legitimate enterprise. From the first day I saw him, I knew he was not right for my daughter. But she was in love, or so I thought. Now I think what she loved was the life he could give her. I opposed the wedding. We had a terrible fight. Denise screamed things at me that I will never forget. She told me I was a failure, that I had wasted my life being honest while others prospered. She told me she was not going to make the same mistake I did. Dorothy pleaded with me to give in, not to lose our daughter over pride. So I swallowed my rage and went to that wedding with a fake smile. I watched Denise marry a man I knew would destroy her someday. But it was her decision, her life. After that, our relationship was never the same. Visits became less frequent, calls shorter. When Dorothy became ill with cancer, Denise came to the hospital 4 times in 8 months. 4 times. Always in a rush. Always with excuses about important work, urgent cases, business trips. The day Dorothy died, I held her hand for hours. Denise arrived 3 hours after everything was over. She did not cry. She just hugged me quickly and said she had to leave. She had an important hearing the next day. Terrence did not even come into the hospital. He stayed in the car waiting for her. After the funeral, I sold the house in the city. I could not keep living there, surrounded by memories, surrounded by a life that no longer existed. I bought this little house in Chesterfield County with the little I had saved. A simple place with a piece of land where I could grow my own food, where I could wake up to the sound of roosters and not the noise of the city. Denise told me I was making a mistake, that I was isolating myself from the world, that I was becoming a hermit. But I needed that silence. I needed that peace after decades of battles in the courts, after losing the love of my life. Raymond was the only one who understood me. He came to visit me every month. We would sit on this very porch, drink coffee, and talk about the old days. He told me about his business. I told him about my tomatoes and my chickens, and we laughed. God, how we laughed. The last time I saw him was 5 months ago. He looked tired, older. He told me he had been tidying up his affairs, putting everything in order. "William," he said to me, "if anything happens to me, everything I have is yours. I have no children. I have no one else. You are my only real family." I told him not to talk nonsense, that he would live many more years. But he shook his head with a sad smile. "My heart is tired, brother," he said, and the doctor gave me bad news. I did not want to believe him. I did not want to see the truth in his eyes. And now he was gone, and I had not been there to say goodbye. Sitting on my porch with the coffee already cold in my hands, I understood something. Raymond had left me that inheritance not just because I was his brother, but because he knew who I was. Because he trusted me to do the right thing with it. And Denise wanted to take it from me. My own daughter wanted to destroy me to keep money she did not even need. I got up and went inside the house. I went to my small study, the room where I kept the few items from my former life. I opened an old drawer and took out a wooden box I had not opened in 6 years. Inside were my old judge credentials, my robe carefully folded, photographs from my years in the courtroom, thank you letters from people I had helped, and a yellowed envelope with my name written in Raymond's hand. I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a letter he had written years ago, when we were both younger, when life still seemed full of possibilities. "Brother," the letter said, "if you are reading this, it is because I am gone. I want you to know that everything I am, everything I achieved, was thanks to you. You taught me that money without honor is worthless, that success without integrity is just an illusion. I leave you everything I have because I trust you. I trust that you will do something good with it, something that would make Mama and Dad proud. Do not let anyone take what is yours. Do not let them make you feel small. You are the greatest man I have ever known." Tears rolled down my cheeks as I read those words. Raymond knew. Somehow he knew this might happen. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my pocket. Then I picked up the phone and dialed a number I had not dialed in years. The number for Gloria Jenkins, my former secretary at the courthouse. The woman who had worked with me for 25 years, who knew every case, every document, every secret of that place. Gloria answered on the 3rd ring. "Judge Carter?" she said, surprise in her voice. She could not believe it was me. "Gloria," I said, "I need your help." And then I told her everything. Gloria arrived at my house 2 days later. I saw her get out of her old car, more stooped than I remembered, her hair completely white now. But her eyes were still the same, sharp, intelligent, full of that loyalty, few people in this world possess. We hugged in silence. She smelled of lavender, as always. We went inside, and I made coffee while she looked around with a nostalgic smile. "You live like a monk, Judge," she said, sitting at the kitchen table. "But I guess after so many years dealing with the world's filth, a person needs this cleanliness." I told her everything, every detail of what I had overheard at Denise's house, every word of that conversation that had torn my soul apart. Gloria listened in silence, nodding occasionally, her face growing increasingly serious. When I finished, she pulled an old folder from her purse and placed it on the table. "Judge," she said, "there is something you need to know. 2 weeks ago, I got a call from your daughter's lawyer. They wanted access to your court files, your old medical records, anything that could be used to prove mental decline or incapacity." A chill ran down my spine. "And what did you tell them?" "I told them all those files were sealed and they needed a court order." "But Judge, they did not stop. They hired a private investigator. That man was asking about you in the town, talking to your neighbors, trying to find anything they could use against you." "And did they find anything?" Gloria smiled wryly. "They found that you live alone, that you do not talk much to people, that you spend your days tending your garden. To them, that is evidence of social isolation, of possible cognitive decline. They are going to paint a picture of you as an old man lost in the past, incapable of making decisions." Rage started to boil inside me again, but Gloria held up a hand. "However, Judge, they made a mistake. A big one." She opened the folder and took out several documents. "I never destroyed your files. I kept copies of everything. Your most important cases, your rulings, the letters of recognition, the testimonies of people whose lives you changed." She paused and looked at me directly. "And I kept something else." "What?" "The records of certain cases where Terrence Howard's name appears. Your son-in-law is not as clean as he thinks, Judge. 12 years ago, he was involved in a real estate fraud case right here in Richmond. He was never formally charged because the main witness mysteriously disappeared. But the documents are there. The connections are there." I looked at the papers Gloria had placed in front of me. They were copies of investigations, testimonies, suspicious transactions. Everything perfectly organized, as only Gloria knew how to do. "Why did you keep this?" I asked. "Because you taught me something, Judge. You taught me that the truth must always have backup, that documents speak when voices are silenced. I kept this because I knew that someday it might be necessary. And it seems that day has arrived." We spent the entire afternoon reviewing the documents. Gloria had done an extraordinary job. She had dates, names, connections between shell companies and bank accounts. She had testimonies from employees who had worked for Terrence and who had seen things they never dared to report. But that was not all. Gloria pulled out her phone and showed me something else, an audio recording. "I recorded this a week ago," she said. "Your daughter called me. She wanted me to testify in her favor, to say that you had shown signs of mental confusion during your last years as a judge. I told her I would think about it." She played the audio. It was Denise's voice, clear and cold. "Miss Jenkins, I understand your loyalty to my father, but you have to understand that this is for his own good. He cannot handle such a large inheritance. He will lose it. He will be a victim of scammers. We just want to protect him." Gloria's voice in the recording responded calmly. "And how much would I be paid for that testimony?" There was a pause. Then Denise replied, "We could talk about $60,000 cash. No one has to know." I stopped the audio. I could not listen anymore. That was not my daughter, or maybe it was, and I had never wanted to see it. "There is more, Judge," Gloria said softly. 2 days ago, I got the summons. They are going to present the case in Judge Jerome Patterson's courtroom." "Jerome?" I said. Of course I remembered. Jerome had been my intern almost 32 years ago. A brilliant but insecure young man who almost made the worst mistake of his career by accepting a bribe from a major criminal. I discovered him in time, confronted him in my office, and gave him a lesson he never forgot. Because of that, Jerome rejected the money, reported the attempted bribe, and became one of the most respected judges in the district. "He does not know you are the defendant," Gloria continued. The documents just say William Carter without mentioning your former title as judge. Denise and Terrence did everything they could to make sure that information did not appear in the official papers. They want this to seem like a simple case of mental incapacity of an ordinary old man. I understand, I said. They want Jerome to make the decision without knowing who I really am. Exactly. And if he finds out during the hearing, it will be too late for him to recuse himself from the case. The judgment will have to be given that same day according to the procedures they requested. A quick hearing with no appeals, no time to react. It was a clever plan. I had to admit Denise had learned the legal system well. She knew how to manipulate the timing, how to present the documents, how to create a situation where I would be defenseless. But she had forgotten something. She had forgotten who her father was. She had forgotten that I spent 38 years facing criminals far more dangerous than she was. She had forgotten that every case I judged taught me something about human nature, about its tricks, about its lies. Gloria, I said, I need you to do something else for me. Anything, Judge. I need you to contact some people. People who worked with me, who know me. I need testimonies, letters, anything that proves my mind is perfectly clear. And I need you to find my brother Raymond's attorney. He has the original will documents. I want to know exactly what Raymond left and how. Gloria nodded and quickly took notes. Anything else? Yes. I need this to be kept secret. Denise and Terrence cannot know we are preparing a defense. They have to believe I am just a confused old man who will show up to court without understanding what is happening. Understood. Are you going to hire an attorney? No. I am going to represent myself. Gloria looked at me in surprise. Judge, that is risky. Very risky. I know, I said. But I also know that no attorney is going to defend this case with the passion that I can. No attorney has what I have. 38 years of experience in that courtroom. The exact knowledge of how every procedure works. And above all, the truth on my side. Gloria closed her folder and looked at me with those eyes that had seen so many battles by my side. You are always the best, Judge, and I know you still are. We are going to win this. After Gloria left, I stayed alone in my house as the sun set behind the trees. I went out onto the porch with a cup of tea and sat in my old rocking chair. The chickens were already in their coop. The crickets were beginning their nightly concert. I thought about Denise, about the girl she had been. I remembered when she was 7 years old and fell off her bike. She came running to me, knees bleeding, crying. I hugged her, cleaned her wounds, and told her everything would be all right. Daddy will always protect you, I said. And now that same girl wanted to destroy me. I pulled Raymond's letter from my pocket and read it again under the fading light. Do not let anyone make you feel small. You are the greatest man I have ever known. Brother, I whispered to the wind, I am going to honor your memory. I am going to fight this battle the way you taught me, with my head held high, with the truth as my only weapon. The next 2 weeks were intense. Gloria worked tirelessly. She got statements from 14 of my former colleagues, all retired judges or respected lawyers who attested to my mental clarity and character. She found Raymond's attorney, a man named Charles Freeman, who confirmed the will was clear and legal. Raymond had left everything to me with explicit instructions that no one else should have any claim to his estate. Charles told me something else that made my blood boil. Denise had contacted him 3 weeks before, trying to convince him that the will should be contested, that Raymond was not in his right mind when he wrote it. Charles had refused and told her the will was ironclad. That was when she decided to come after me instead. Gloria also dug deeper into Terrence's past. What she found was worse than I expected. The real estate fraud from 12 years ago was just the beginning. There were other deals, other suspicious transactions. A pattern of manipulation that stretched back decades. Shell companies in Delaware. Money moving through accounts in ways that made no sense unless you were hiding something. Terrence Howard had built his fortune on lies. And now he had convinced my daughter to help him steal from her own father. 3 days before the hearing, I received a call I was not expecting. It was Denise. Her voice sounded sweet, almost affectionate, like when she was a child and wanted something from me. "Pop," she said. "How are you? I have been thinking about you a lot. I know things have been strained between us lately." "Strained?" I repeated. "That is an interesting way to describe it. There was an awkward pause. Look, Pop, I know all this talk about Uncle Raymond's inheritance scared you, but we really just want to help. Terrence and I have been talking, and we thought maybe we were too harsh with you. Oh, really? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Yes. In fact, we wanted to invite you to dinner. We could talk about all of this calmly. As a family, no lawyers, no pressure, just you, me, and Terrence, like in the old days. The old days never included Terrence, I thought. But I said something else. When? Tomorrow night. Come at 7. I will make your favorite dish. That fried chicken and collard greens you loved. All right, I said. I will be there. When I hung up, I knew exactly what they were doing. A final attempt to get me to sign something before the hearing. Or maybe they wanted to record me saying something they could use against me. They thought I was a fool, a naive old man who would fall into their trap. I called Gloria and told her the plan. She warned me not to go, that it was too risky, but I needed to see how far they were capable of going. I needed to look my daughter in the eye one last time before the court. The following night, I drove to Richmond. I arrived at their house at exactly 7. Terrence greeted me with a fake smile that did not reach his eyes. Mr. Carter, it is good to see you. Come in, come in. The house smelled of home cooking, but everything felt staged, artificial. Denise came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. She looked so much like her mother in that moment that my heart ached. Daddy, she said, hugging me. I am so glad you came. Come sit down. Dinner is almost ready. We sat in the elegant dining room with those expensive dishes that always seemed unnecessary to me. Denise served the chicken, but I could barely eat. Every bite tasted like betrayal. Terrence started the conversation with his false kindness. Mr. Carter, we have been thinking a lot about your situation, the house in the country. Living alone at your age, with no one to help if something happens. It must be very lonely. I have everything I need, I replied. But Pop, Denise intervened. It is not just what you need now. It is about your future. What if you get sick? What if you have an emergency and no one is around? We worry about you. Her words sounded rehearsed, like a badly acted script. I looked into her eyes, searching for a glimpse of the girl I had raised. But I only saw calculation. I only saw ambition disguised as concern. It is funny that you worry so much now, I said. You did not worry when your mother was dying. You did not worry for the last 6 years while I lived alone. But now that $950,000 is at stake, suddenly I am your priority. Denise's face hardened. That is not fair, Pop. That is not fair? I looked at her directly. I heard your conversation with Terrence 3 weeks ago. I know exactly what you were planning. I know you want to declare me incompetent to keep Raymond's inheritance. The silence that followed was dense as concrete. Terrence dropped his fork. Denise paled, then turned red. You spied on us, she said, her voice trembling with rage. I was in your house, I replied. I came downstairs for a glass of water and heard my own daughter planning to destroy me. It was not spying. It was finding out who you really are. Terrence stood up abruptly. You do not understand anything, old man. That money should be ours. Denise is the only family Raymond had left. It is natural for her to inherit. Raymond decided who to leave his estate to, I said, remaining calm, though inside I felt like a volcano. And he left it to me because he knew you two would do exactly this. Denise also stood up. Her face was transformed by anger. You know what, Pop? You are right. I want that money. I deserve it. After years of watching you waste your life on your stupid principles. While other judges got rich, you lived like a poor man for your integrity. Look where that integrity got you. A miserable little house in the country, alone and bitter. Her words were knives, each one designed to hurt, and they succeeded. But I was not going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me bleed. At least I can look at myself in the mirror, I said, getting up as well. At least I never betrayed my family for money. At least I know what honor means. Honor? Terrence laughed scornfully. Honor does not pay the bills, Mr. Carter. Honor does not build businesses. Honor is for fools like you who end up old and alone. I walked toward the door. Denise followed me. Pup, wait. Her voice now held a tone of panic. It does not have to be this way. We can reach an agreement. We can split the inheritance. 50 over 50. You keep your part, we keep ours. I stopped and turned to look at her. And there I saw what I had been denying myself for years. I saw that my daughter had become someone I did not know. Someone Dorothy would not have recognized. Someone who had sold her soul for a life of luxury and appearances. There is no possible agreement, Denise. Raymond wanted me to have that inheritance, and I am going to respect his will. If you want to fight for it, I will see you in court. Fine, she said, and her voice became cold as ice. I will see you in court, but I warn you, Pop, I have witnesses who are going to testify about your mental state. I have documents that prove your social isolation. I have everything I need for a judge to declare you incompetent. She stepped closer, her eyes burning with something I had never seen before. And when he does, you will not only lose the inheritance, you will also lose control over your own life. You will be assigned a guardian, and that guardian will be me. The threat hung in the air like poison. Terrence came up behind her with a victorious smile. You should have accepted our deal, Mr. Carter. Now you are going to lose everything. I walked out of that house feeling that I had just lost my daughter forever. I drove back to the country with silent tears rolling down my cheeks. I was not crying for the money or the inheritance. I was crying for the girl who had disappeared, replaced by this cold, calculating woman. 2 days later, the day of the hearing arrived. I woke up early. Before dawn, I showered, shaved carefully. But I did not put on a suit. I did not dress as Judge William Carter. I put on my country clothes, my work shirt, my worn-out boots. I wanted Denise and Terrence to see me exactly as they saw me. As a simple, defenseless old farmer. Gloria arrived at 6 inches the morning. She carried a briefcase with all the documents we would need. Judge, she said, looking at my clothes. Are you sure about this? Completely sure, I replied. Let them think they have already won. The blow will be harder. We drove in silence to Richmond. The 45 minutes felt eternal, and yet too short. Gloria reviewed all the key points with me. All the documents, all the testimonies we had prepared. When we arrived at the courthouse, the building stood imposing against the gray morning sky. Richmond Circuit Court, the place where I had spent 38 years of my life. How many times had I entered through those doors, I thought. How many times had I climbed those stairs with my black robe, my briefcase full of cases and rulings. Now I entered dressed as a farmer, with an old hat in my hands, stooped as if the weight of the years had defeated me. But inside me, Judge William Carter was more alive than ever, and he was ready for the most important battle of his life. Not the battle for Raymond's money, not the battle for property or bank accounts, but the battle for my dignity, for my honor, for showing my daughter that you cannot destroy a man who has spent his whole life defending the truth. Gloria walked beside me, her briefcase full of documents that were our ammunition. We slowly climbed the stairs. Each step brought me closer to the moment of truth. And then we arrived. The courtroom doors were open. Inside, I could see Denise and Terrence sitting with their lawyer, a young man in an expensive suit who probably charged $600 an hour. Denise looked confident, elegant, in a perfect business dress. I took a deep breath and pushed the doors open. The sound made every head turn toward me. I saw Denise's smile. I watched as Terrence nudged their lawyer and pointed toward me with his chin, as if to say, "Look, there is the old fool." I walked slowly down the center aisle, dragging my feet a little, stooped, with my hat clutched in my hands. I looked exactly like what they wanted me to look like, a confused old man, out of place, lost in a world he no longer understood. Denise leaned into Terrence and whispered something. He laughed quietly, shaking his head with contempt. That moment was etched into my memory like a photograph. The moment my own daughter publicly mocked me, believing she had already won. But then something changed in the room. Judge Jerome Patterson entered through the side door. He wore his black robe, his face serious and professional. He walked toward his seat without looking at anyone, as befits a judge starting a hearing. Everyone stood up. The bailiff announced, "Court in session." His Honor Judge Jerome Patterson presiding. Jerome sat down and began to organize his papers. He started reading aloud. Case number 78512. Petition for declaration of mental incapacity. Presented by Denise Carter Howard, against Mr. William Carter. His voice was firm, professional. He had not looked at me yet. He was following the procedure as he should, reading the documents before addressing the parties. It continued. The petitioner alleges that Mr. William Carter, aged 71 years, is not in appropriate mental condition to manage the assets inherited from his deceased brother, Raymond Carter, whose estate is valued at approximately $950,000. The petitioner requests to be designated as the legal guardian of the defendant. Denise was smiling. Terrence nodded with satisfaction. Their lawyer already had his first folder open, ready to present his case. And then Jerome looked up from his papers. His eyes swept the room. First he looked at Denise and her lawyer. Then his gaze moved to where I was sitting, alone on the defendant's bench, in my country clothes, with my hat in my lap. Our eyes met. I watched as the color left his face. I watched as his hands, those firm hands that held the gavel of justice, began to tremble. His mouth opened slightly, as if he wanted to say something, but the words were stuck in his throat. He stood up abruptly, so fast that his chair rolled backward with a harsh sound. The papers on his desk shifted with the wind of his sudden movement. "My God," he whispered. His words were barely audible, but in the absolute silence of the room, everyone heard them. "My God, is it really him?" All heads turned toward me. Denise's lawyer frowned, confused. Denise stopped smiling. Terrence leaned forward, trying to understand what was happening. Jerome gripped the edge of his desk as if he needed physical support. "Judge Carter," he said, and his voice broke. "Are you Judge William Carter?" It was not a question. It was a statement filled with shock, disbelief, and something that looked a lot like fear. I stood up slowly. I let my posture change. The stooped back straightened, the slumped shoulders squared. The low-held head lifted with dignity. In that moment, I stopped being the confused old farmer and became who I had always been. "Yes, Jerome," I said, my voice clear and firm. "It is me." The silence that followed was absolute. No one breathed. No one moved. It was as if time itself had stopped in that courtroom. Jerome walked down from the bench. Something completely irregular. Something a judge never does during a hearing. But he was not acting as a judge at that moment. He was acting as the young intern I had saved 32 years ago. As the man whose career I had protected when he was about to destroy it. He approached me with uncertain steps. His face showed a mixture of emotions. Shock, respect, and something that looked like shame. "Judge Carter," he repeated. "I did not. The documents did not. They did not say you were." "I know," I said calmly. "It was intentional. They wanted this to look like a simple case. Just some old man of no importance." I turned toward Denise. Her face had lost all its color. Her mouth was open in shock. Terrence had stood up, looking between Jerome and me with growing horror in his eyes. "Can someone explain to me what is going on here?" Denise's lawyer said, clearly confused. "Who is this man?" Jerome turned to him. "This man," he said, his voice trembling, "is Judge William Carter. He was a magistrate in this court for 38 years. He is a legend in this judicial circuit. He is the most honorable man who has ever held this office." The lawyer paled. Denise collapsed into her chair as if her legs could not hold her anymore. Terrence grabbed the edge of the table, his knuckles turning white. "I did not know," the lawyer stammered. "My client never mentioned the documents." "No, of course she did not mention it," I said. "My daughter did everything possible to hide that information, because she knew that if any judge in this district discovered who I truly was, her case would fall apart." Jerome returned to his bench, but his professional composure was broken. He sat down heavily, running a hand over his face. "I need a recess," he said. I need to process this." "Your Honor," Denise's lawyer intervened with a desperate voice. "My client has the right to present her case. The fact that the defendant is a former judge does not change the facts of his current situation." "The facts?" Jerome asked, and there was steel in his voice. "Now you want to talk about facts?" He leaned forward. "The fact is that you are accusing the man who wrote some of the most brilliant rulings in this court's history of mental incompetence. The man who never, not once in 38 years, had a sentence overturned on appeal. the man whose legal mind was so sharp that lawyers with 20 years of experience trembled when presenting cases in front of him. "But, Your Honor," the lawyer insisted, "that was in the past. We are talking about his current condition. My client has evidence that he lives in isolation, without significant social contact, in conditions that suggest—" I stood up. "With your permission, Your Honor," I said, "I would like to represent myself in this case." Jerome looked at me. There were tears in his eyes now. "Judge Carter," he said, "you know you have that right. But you also know that representing yourself in a case of this nature is—" "It is exactly what I need to do," I interrupted him, "because no one can defend my mind and my honor better than myself." I looked toward Denise. She could not meet my gaze. Her eyes were fixed on the table in front of her. Terrence was gripping her arm, whispering something urgently in her ear. "Your Honor," I continued, "if you allow me, I would like to begin with a statement. Not a formal declaration of defense yet. Just a few words about why we are really here today." Jerome nodded slowly. "Proceed, Judge Carter. And I apologize. I know you no longer practice, but I cannot call you anything else. You will always be Judge Carter to me." His words caused a murmur in the room. There were some people in the public benches, court employees who had come in to observe what they thought would be a routine case. Now everyone was whispering among themselves, their faces showing recognition, shock, and fascination. I cleared my throat and began to speak. 32 years ago, I said, a young intern worked in my office. He was brilliant, dedicated, with a promising future. But he was in a desperate financial situation. His mother was ill and needed expensive treatments he could not afford. Jerome closed his eyes. He knew exactly what story I was about to tell. "A major criminal was being tried in my court," I continued. His associates approached that young intern and offered him $75,000 in cash. All he had to do was leak information about my strategy, about how I was evaluating the case, about my leanings. The silence in the room was absolute. Denise finally looked at me, her eyes wide. That young intern, I continued, was about to accept. He came to my office one afternoon, with a confession on his lips, with tears in his eyes, his soul torn between his love for his mother and his professional integrity. I paused, letting the weight of the words settle, and I told him something he never forgot. I paused, letting the weight of the words settle. I told him that easy money always comes with a price that is much higher than it seems, that once you sell your integrity, you never get it back, that he could save his mother in an honest way or a dishonest way. But if he chose the latter, he would lose not only his career but his soul. Jerome had tears rolling down his cheeks now, without trying to hide them. "That young man rejected the money," I continued. "He reported the attempted bribe, and I helped him find legal ways to get funds for his mother. We organized a collection among the court employees. We got the hospital to accept a payment plan. His mother received her treatment, and that young intern learned the most important lesson of his life." I looked directly at Jerome. That young man grew up to become one of the most respected judges in this district, a man of honor, a man who never forgot that integrity is worth more than all the money in the world. Jerome wiped his tears with the back of his hand. His voice was barely a whisper when he spoke. "You saved my life, Judge Carter, and my mother's. She lived 12 more years thanks to you." "That is why I am here today, Jerome," I said. "Because my own daughter, the girl I raised with those same values I taught you, is standing in front of this court trying to steal my brother's inheritance. She is using the legal system that I respected all my life as a weapon against me." I turned toward Denise. Her face was pale, her hands trembling on the table. "My daughter believes I am a foolish old man living in isolation because my mind is deteriorating. But the truth is, I went to the country because after 38 years seeing the worst face of humanity in this court, I needed to remember that goodness still exists in the world. I needed peace. After losing my wife Dorothy, I needed silence after decades of shouting and arguing." Denise's lawyer tried to intervene. "Your Honor, this is very emotional, but it does not change the facts of the case. We have witnesses." "Witnesses?" I said, turning to him. "What kind of witnesses? The private investigator they hired to spy on me? The neighbors they interrogated, trying to find anything at all, that they could twist to make me look bad?" I took some folded papers from my pocket. Gloria stood up from where she was sitting in the public area and brought me her briefcase. I opened it on the defendant's table. "Your Honor," I said, "I also have witnesses. I have letters from 14 former colleagues, all respected judges and lawyers who attest to my mental clarity. I have records proving that I have been managing my small property perfectly competently. I have bank statements that show I handle my finances better than many people half my age." I began pulling documents from the briefcase, placing them on the table one by one. Every paper was a piece of evidence. Every letter was a voice speaking for me. "But more than that," I continued, "I have evidence of why my daughter is really doing this. And it has nothing to do with concern for my well-being." Denise stood up abruptly. "Pop, please." Her voice cracked. "Do not do this." "Do not do what, Denise?" I asked. "Do not tell the truth? You had no problem planning my destruction. Why should I have a problem exposing you?" Gloria approached and handed me a small recorder. I placed it on the table where everyone could see it. "Your Honor," I said, "this recording was made 1 week ago. It is a telephone conversation between my daughter and Miss Gloria Jenkins, who was my secretary for 25 years in this court." Jerome leaned forward. "Proceed." I pressed the playback button. Denise's voice filled the room, clear and cold. "Miss Jenkins, I understand your loyalty to my father. But you have to understand that this is for his own good. He cannot handle such a large inheritance. He will lose it. He will be a victim of scammers. We just want to protect him." Then came Gloria's voice. "And how much would I be paid for that testimony?" The pause was long. Then Denise's reply. "We could talk about $60,000 cash. No one has to know." I stopped the recording. The silence in the room was deafening. Denise had her head in her hands. Terrence was pale as a ghost. The lawyer had closed his folder and seemed to be seriously considering running out of the room. "My daughter attempted to bribe a witness," I said. "She offered $60,000 in cash for someone to lie under oath about my mental state. And she wants to be my guardian. She wants to control my life and my money." "Your Honor," the lawyer tried again with a desperate voice, "that recording could have been taken out of context. It could have been edited." "It was not edited," Gloria said, standing up from the public area. "I made that recording, Judge Patterson. You know me. I worked in this court for 25 years under Judge Carter. I never lied then, and I am not lying now. That conversation happened exactly as it sounds." Jerome nodded. "I know, Miss Jenkins. Your testimony is credible to this court. But there is more," I said. "Continue." I pulled another folder from Gloria's briefcase. "Much more. Because while my daughter was investigating me, I was investigating my son-in-law." Terrence jumped up. "This is ridiculous. I am not on trial here." "No," I said, looking directly at him. "Not yet. But you should be." I opened the folder and took out documents. "Your Honor, Terrence Howard was involved 12 years ago in a real estate fraud case right here in Richmond. The investigations never led to formal charges because the main witness mysteriously disappeared. But the documents are here. The suspicious transfers, the shell companies, everything." Terrence's face went from pale to red. "That was never proven. I was never accused of anything." "Because the witness disappeared," I repeated. "But the documents do not lie. And these documents show a pattern of manipulation, deception, and the use of the legal system for personal gain." I placed the papers on the judge's bench. Jerome looked at them briefly, his eyes moving quickly over the pages. "My son-in-law convinced my daughter that I was an obstacle to their wealth," I continued. "He convinced her that they deserved my brother's money more than I did. And together they designed this plan to steal not only my inheritance but my dignity, my freedom, and my right to control my own life." I turned toward Denise. She was finally looking at me, tears streaming down her face. "Do you know when you broke my heart, daughter? It was not when I heard your plan to declare me incompetent. It was not when you offered that bribe to Gloria." My voice cracked, but I continued. "It was at dinner 3 days ago, when you looked at me and told me my principles were for fools. That honor was worthless." I took a breath, because in that moment, I knew I had failed as a father. I knew I could not pass on the most important thing, that there are things more valuable than money, that integrity is priceless. That family is not betrayed for greed. Denise was openly sobbing. Pop, I am sorry. I did not. Terrence convinced me that. I am so sorry. Terrence grabbed her arm. Do not say anything else, Denise. Do not admit anything. But Denise shook him off. Let go of me, she said. She stood up and looked at me. My whole life, she said, her voice choked. I saw you reject opportunities for your principles. I saw others prosper while you barely survived on your judge's salary. I saw Mama worry about medical bills while you worried about justice. And I swore I would not be like that. I swore I would take opportunities, that I would be successful, that I would have the life you never gave us. Her words were like daggers, but she was finally telling the truth. She was finally showing what was really in her heart. And look where that led you, Denise, I said softly. It led you to this courtroom, trying to destroy your own father. It led you to offer bribes, to manipulate the system, to become exactly what I spent 38 years fighting. She covered her face with her hands, her sobs filling the room. Jerome gently tapped his gavel. Mr. Howard, sit down. Mrs. Carter Howard, sit down. This court needs a 30-minute recess to review all this evidence. But, Your Honor, Denise's lawyer protested. My client is clearly under emotional stress. Perhaps we should postpone. There will be no postponement, Jerome said firmly. This case will be resolved today. 30 minutes. He struck his gavel and left the room.